Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India Live, India's voice to the world. I'm Siddharth Bharadwaj. Coming up in the next 30 minutes. India's global outreach on Operation Sindoor expands further as all party delegations engage with key figures in multiple nations, highlighting India's continued fight against terrorism. India slams Pakistan at UN Security Council over baseless allegations, accuses it of gross hypocrisy, says Pakistan has repeatedly used the civilian cover to advance the cause of terrorism. Russia and Ukraine begin a major prisoner exchange, a biggest swap where both sides received 390 people in the first stage, while Russia to present peace accord draft soon. US stocks tumble over 1% after Trump invokes the EU tariffs. Apple dips 3% on iPhone tariff. Trump says he's not looking for a deal with the EU. India continues its global campaign against Pakistan-sponsored terrorism, with all party delegations engaged in diplomatic efforts and visiting key countries to spread the message of zero tolerance against terrorism. The Group 1 delegation, led by BJP MP Bajant Panda, including MPs from the BJP, AIMIM and other parties, along with former diplomats like Harsh Shringla, arrived in Bahrain to showcase India's unwavering stand against cross-border terrorism. Group 5, led by Congress MP Shashi Tharoor, comprised members from the BJP, Telugu Desam Party and Jharkhand Mukti Morcha Party, is visiting Guyana to spread one message against terrorism. They will transit through New York and visit the 9/11 memorial before heading to their first destination, Guyana. Before his departure, Shashi Tharoor said that the delegation will share India's stance on terrorism and tell the world how India has been suffering from the past many years.
The reason we're going is to speak for the nation, to speak about this horrendous crisis we were subjected to, in which our country was attacked by terrorists in the cruelest possible way. We need to speak up with clarity and conviction for our country, for our response, and to give the world the message that we will not be silenced by terrorism. And we don't want the world to look away either. We don't want indifference to triumph over the truth. It's a mission of peace, it's a mission of hope, and it's a mission that will one day remind the world that India stands for all the values we need to preserve in the world today, of peace, of democracy, of freedom, and not of hatred, of killing, and of terror.
While Group 6, led by DMK leader and MP Kanimori Karunanidhi, met leaders, thinkers and lawmakers in Russia, conveying India's message against terrorism.
They understand that it is a very, very important point the world is facing, and it is an issue which does not affect India. It affects the entire world, and no country should be harboring, terrorists, training them or supporting them or allowing them to use that country to create their base.
India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar shared his remarks on how India and Germany can upgrade their ties as two countries mark 25 years of their strategic partnership. Jaishankar, who is visiting Germany, made these remarks during an interaction at German Council on Foreign Relations and acknowledged German support to India after Pahalgam terrorist attack.
When it comes to terrorism, I think today, there's virtually no country which would say, I approve of what is done. or no country which would say, I don't condemn what was done. And if I were to say, I have the right to defend myself, my people, I have the right to secure my country, I think much of the world would agree with me. And I'm happy to say that Germany does. We are very encouraged both by the very early condemnation of the terrorist attack, as well as the very clear message which we got on the 7th of May and again today from Minister Wadeful, that Germany recognizes India's right to defend itself against terrorism.
Jaishankar offered suggestions on collaboration in several areas to take the ties ahead, listing down the challenges which the modern world has brought forth, such as the chips war, climate change, poverty, damage done by COVID pandemic, amongst others. External Affairs Minister expressed confidence in the India-Germany ties to face them. Sharing his engagements in Germany, he noted that the time is ripe to think about the next 25 years and how we can fully realize the potential of India-Germany ties. He expressed optimism for trade ties to grow between the two countries, and an FTA with the EU would help in that regard.
India and Germany are part of a group called G4, which has been trying to press for a much more contemporary United Nations. So there is a global agenda. There should be an effort for deeper conversations. We need to build up a stronger bilateral collaboration. And much of that, in my view, can be achieved or can be furthered by an expeditious conclusion of an India-European free trade agreement. A free trade agreement in today's context, particularly because for the European Union, in many ways it has been a very key pillar of its foreign policy engagements. To conclude an FTA agreement has a significance beyond trade, beyond investment, beyond economics.
India called out Pakistan's grossly hypocritical behavior at the UN Security Council, saying a nation that makes no distinction between terrorists and civilians has no credentials to speak about protecting civilians. India's permanent representative to the UN, Ambassador P. Harish, was addressing the UNSC open debate on Friday under the agenda item Protection of Civilians in Armed Conflict. He highlighted that the Pakistani army deliberately shelled Indian border villages earlier this month, killing civilians and intentionally targeted places of worship. Earlier, Pakistan's ambassador at the UN, Asim Iftikhar Ahmed, in his remarks at the debate, raised the Kashmir issue and spoke about the recent conflict between India and Pakistan. In a strong response, Harish said, India has experienced decades of Pakistani-sponsored terrorist attacks across our borders. Further, India told the Security Council that earlier this month, the Pakistani army deliberately shelled Indian border villages, killing more than 20 civilians and injuring more than 80. He stressed that the international community should not ignore the adverse impacts of all forms of terrorism, including those emanating from across borders, in the debate on protection of civilians.
India has experienced decades of Pakistani-sponsored terrorist attacks across our borders. This has ranged from the horrific 26/11 attack on the city of Mumbai to the barbaric mass murder of innocent tourists in Pahalgam in April 2025. Pakistan has repeatedly used a civilian cover to advance the cause of terrorism. We just recently saw senior government, police and military officials pay respects at the funeral of noted terrorists targeted by Operation Sindoor. A nation that makes no distinction between terrorists and civilians has no credentials to speak about protecting civilians. There was intentional targeting of places of worship, including gurudwaras, temples and convents, as well as medical facilities. To preach at this body after such behavior is grossly hypocritical. Let us be clear. Protection of civilians should not serve as an argument for protection of UN-designated terrorists.
Ambassador Harish exposed Pakistan's disinformation campaign on Indus Waters Treaty at UN, explaining why IWT was put into abeyance legally due to Pakistan's state-sponsored terrorism in India's Jammu and Kashmir.
India entered into the Indus Water Treaty 65 years ago in good faith. The preamble of the treaty describes that the treaty was concluded in a spirit of goodwill and friendship. Throughout the 6.5 decades, Pakistan has violated the spirit of the treaty by inflicting 3 wars and thousands of terror attacks on India. However, Pakistan has continued to block consistently any changes to this infrastructure and any modifications of the provisions which is permissible under the treaty. In fact, in 2012, terrorists even attacked the Tulbul navigation project in Jammu and Kashmir. These cynical acts continue to endanger safety of our projects and lives of civilians. It is against this backdrop that India has finally announced that the treaty will be in abeyance until Pakistan, which is a global epicenter of terror, credibly and irrevocably ends its support for cross-border terrorism.
India has intensified its diplomatic efforts to get Pakistan re-included in the Financial Action Task Force grey list. The move comes after the terror attack in Pahalgam, Jammu and Kashmir on April 22, 2025, in which 26 innocent civilians lost their lives. India is preparing to present a detailed dossier at the FATF plenary session meeting to be held in France in June 2025. The dossier will contain evidence of Pakistan's repeated failure to stop terror financing and misuse of international funds. Pakistan has not taken effective action against UN-designated terrorist groups such as Lashkar-e-Taiba and Jaish-e-Mohammed. Pakistan was previously on the FATF grey list from 2018 to 2022, due to which it faced difficulties in assessing international financial assistance. India argues that the decision to remove Pakistan from grey list was premature, as it is still not fully capable of stopping terrorism financing. Being included in the grey list can have a profound impact on Pakistan's economy, as it reduces the confidence of international banks and financial institutions, making it difficult to obtain investments and loans. India plans to strongly raise this issue before the member countries of FATF. These countries include countries like America, United Kingdom, Japan and India. India needs the unanimous support of all member countries to get its point across. For this, India has already started bilateral discussions with many countries and is raising its concerns at global forums. India has also recently raised allegations of Pakistan sponsoring terrorist activities at the United Nations and other international forums. This issue is also important for global counter-terrorism efforts. The Ministry of Civil Aviation and FICCI have launched the curtainraiser for Wings India 2026 in New Delhi. The event unveiled the official brochure, promo video and mobile app. Union Minister Ram Mohan Naidu reaffirmed India's aviation vision and global commitment. DD India's Tapas Bhattacharya with more details.
The journey to Wings India 2026 has officially taken flight. In a grand curtain raiser hosted in New Delhi, the Ministry of Civil Aviation, in collaboration with FICCI, unveiled Asia's largest civil aviation event, which will be held in Hyderabad from 28th to 31st January 2026. The launch event saw the release of the Wings India 2026 brochure, a powerful promotional video, and the official debut of the Wings India 2026 mobile app, designed to connect stakeholders from across the globe with just a tap. India's Civil Aviation Minister Ram Mohan Naidu took center stage to reaffirm the nation's global aviation commitment.
This gathering is not merely about announcing an event. It is about declaration of a purpose. It is reaffirmation of India's commitment to not just keep pace with global aviation, but to lead it, shape it, and also define its future.
He emphasized India's open skies policy, transparent regulations, and strong international partnerships. He also unveiled the theme of Wings 2026.
I'm honored to officially unveil the theme of Wings India 2026, which is Indian aviation paving the way for future, from designing to deployment, manufacturing to maintenance, inclusivity to innovation, and safety to sustainability.
Wings India 2026 is expected to showcase India's vision, innovation, and boundless opportunities in aviation. Tapas Bhattacharya's report for DD India.
The southwest monsoon has officially arrived in Kerala, marking its onset today, the 24th of May 2025. That's 8 days earlier than the usual date of June 1st. This year's early arrival makes it in fact, the earliest monsoon onset over Kerala since 2009, when it began on May 23rd. And if we look further back, the earliest onset on record since 1975 was in 1990, when the monsoon arrived as early as May 19th, a full 13 days ahead of the normal schedule. With the monsoon setting in early, eyes are now on its progress across the country. The mortal remains of 22-year-old Lieutenant Shashank Tiwari, who died while saving a fellow soldier during a patrol operation in Sikkim, reached his residence in Uttar Pradesh's Ayodhya. People paid emotional tribute to brave Lieutenant Shashank Tiwari with moist eyes. A large number of local people, along with public representatives, also reached Shashank Tiwari's Gadopur residence. At 2 p.m. IST, army personnel will reach Jabthara Ghat with the mortal remains. Martyr Lieutenant Shashank Tiwari will be cremated with state honours. According to officials, the officer lost his life during a routine patrol on Thursday when a fellow soldier slipped into a river with a strong current. Lieutenant Tiwari jumped in to rescue him and succeeded, but was swept away in the process and could not be saved. We are heading for a short break. We'll be right after this very short break. News and updates will continue. Stay tuned to DD India.
Geopolitics and trade deals. Economic challenges amid development. Hard work and the path to prosperity. It's the economy always. Between walkers, money is what money does and says. Supply creates its own demand. Between the bulls pulls and bears tears. When supply chains globalization and India rises to the podium. We'll get you centered with the economic brief at 8 p.m. every Thursday on DD India.
You're watching DD Live. I'm Siddharth Bharadwaj. Russia and Ukraine have each handed over 390 soldiers and civilians in the biggest prisoner exchange since the start of conflict in 2022. Both sides said they had each released 270 soldiers and 120 civilians so far, with more due to be released on Saturday and Sunday. The released Ukrainians arrived at a hospital in the northern Chernihiv region in buses and filed out, pale, most of them with shaven heads and wrapped up in Ukrainian flags. On the other side, the Russian Defense Ministry said servicemen and civilians, including those captured by Ukrainian forces in Russia's Kursk border region during Kyiv's offensive in recent months, were among those handed over. They were currently on Belarusian territory and were to be taken to Russia for medical checks and treatment, the ministry said. Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said on Friday that the release of 390 people by each side was the first stage of a 1,000 for 1,000 exchange agreed with Russia in Istanbul.
It was the only significant result of the meeting in Turkey is that the Russians are blocking everything else. They are blocking it. For now, almost 400 people are home. These are military and civilians. Tomorrow and the day after tomorrow, also the next stages. The formula is 1,000 by 1,000.
Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said on Friday that Moscow would hand Kyiv a draft document outlining its conditions for a long-term peace agreement once the prisoner exchange is completed. Lavrov, in statement, said Russia was committed to working out a peaceful settlement in the more than 3-year-old conflict pitting Moscow against Kiev. He also accused Ukraine of launching waves of drone attacks over several days on Russian targets that caused casualties and disrupted air traffic.
As soon as the exchange of prisoners of war is completed, we will be ready to hand over to the Ukrainian side the draft of such a document that the Russian side is currently finalizing.
Iran and the United States concluded a fifth round of high-stakes nuclear talks in Rome on Friday with limited but inconclusive progress. The discussions were led by Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi and U.S. Special Envoy to the Middle East, Steve Witkoff. Oman played the role of indirect mediator throughout the negotiations. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi said there was potential for progress in the negotiations after Oman made several proposals, but the talks were complicated and more discussions were needed.
We have just completed one of the most professional rounds of negotiations. Once again, we clearly articulated the principled positions of the Islamic Republic of Iran regarding the negotiations. Our positions are completely clear and we are standing firmly by them. I think there is now a better and clearer understanding of our position on the American side.
Meanwhile, Iran's Foreign Ministry spokesman Ismail wrote on social media platform X that the fifth round was held in a calm and professional atmosphere, and the date and venue of the next round will be decided and announced later. Previously, Iran and the United States held 4 rounds of Oman-mediated indirect talks starting from April on Tehran's nuclear program and lifting of US sanctions. The administration of United States President Donald Trump has taken its first concrete action to deliver sanctions relief for Syria, following a surprise policy pivot earlier this month. On Friday, the US Department of the Treasury announced sweeping relief to an array of individuals and entities, which it said will enable new investments and private sector activity consistent with Trump's America First strategy. The US State Department, meanwhile, concurrently issued a waiver to a 2019 law, the Kaiser Syria Civilian Protection Act, that would enable the foreign partners, allies and the region to further unlock Syria's potential. Trump surprised the international community when, on May 13, he pledged to remove sanctions placed on Syria during the leadership of its now ousted leader, President Bashar al-Assad. US President Donald Trump threatened to ratchet up his trade war again on Friday, pushing for a 50% tariff on European Union goods starting June 1st. Trump also unleashed a broadside against smartphone makers, including US tech giant Apple, threatening them with new duties of 25% if they do not move production to the United States. Trump first raised the issue of EU tariffs, telling reporters in the Oval Office that there was nothing the European Union could do to change his mind.
I'm not looking for a deal. I mean, we've set the deal, it's at 50%. But again, there is no tariff if they build their plant here. Now, if somebody comes in and wants to build a plant here, I can talk to them about a little bit of a delay. But, while they're building their plant, which is something I think that would be appropriate, maybe, we'll determine that.
In a separate message posted Friday, Trump blasted Apple boss Tim Cook for failing to move iPhone production to the United States despite repeated requests, insisting the European Union was committed to securing a deal that worked for both sides. EU Trade Chief Maros Sefcovic spoke with US Trade Representative Jameson Greer and US Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick. The European Commission urged US to bring respect, not threats. Stock markets dropped Friday after US President Donald Trump unleashed his latest trade threats of massive tariffs on Apple products and imports from the European Union. Wall Street's main indexes spent the entire session in the red. The biggest loser of the three was the Nasdaq, weighed down by 3% fall in Apple. Paris and Frankfurt ended with losses of around 1.5%, with shares in luxury and car companies. London's FTSE 100, which initially rose, also ended in the red. Germany's DAX had also been higher earlier in the day as German economic growth data was revised up. Oil prices rebounded, meanwhile having earlier dropped by around 1%, while the dollar remained under pressure. The US Justice Department reached a preliminary agreement with Boeing to settle a long-running criminal probe into deadly 737 MAX crashes, drawing condemnation from some crash victim families. Under an agreement in principle, Boeing will pay $1.1 billion and the Department of Justice would dismiss a criminal charge against Boeing over its conduct in the certification of the MAX. The agreement would resolve the case without requiring Boeing to plead guilty to fraud in the certification of the MAX, which was involved in 2 crashes in 2018 and 2019 that claimed 346 lives. Family members of some MAX victims slammed the proposed settlement as a giveaway to Boeing. Time now for sport, and in tennis, Novak Djokovic will be looking to script history as he's set to face Hubert Hurkacz in the final of Geneva Open 2025. Djokovic defeated Cameron Norrie in the semi-finals on Friday to move one step closer to a 100th ATP title. Djokovic will attempt to secure his first tournament victory since winning Olympic gold in Paris last summer. A win in the final would make him only the 3rd player to reach a century of ATP titles after Jimmy Connors and Roger Federer. In the Indian Premier League, Sunrisers Hyderabad thrashed Royal Challengers Bangalore by 42 runs on Friday. A quick-fire start by the openers along with Ishan Kishan's unbeaten 94 led SRH to a gigantic total of 231 runs. Despite the heroics of Phil Salt and Virat Kohli, RCB could only amass 189 before getting bundled out. Hyderabad skipper Pat Cummins led from the front, taking 3 wickets at an economy of just 7. As a result of this defeat, Royal Challengers have slid down to 3rd on table behind Gujarat Titans and Punjab Kings. 16 days after their game in Dharamshala was abandoned before the completion of the first innings, Punjab Kings and Delhi Capitals will meet again at the Savai Man Singh Stadium on Saturday. The Kings have already sealed their spot in the playoff for the first time in 11 years after a win against the Rajasthan Royals. Gujarat's loss against Lucknow Super Giants on Thursday means PBKS can seal a spot in Qualifier 1 with wins in their remaining 2 matches. However, the mood is much more sombre in Capitals' dressing room. Capitals suffered a 59-run drubbing at the hands of the Mumbai Indians, which extinguished the team's hopes of qualification. The team will now hope to finish another below-par campaign with a win. That's all for this edition of DD India Live, but let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on DD India mobile app. The app is available on both Android and iOS platforms, and you can scan the QR code on the screen to download now. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Siddharth Bharadwaj from all of us here in Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India Live.